Thank you for joining us for a special edition of Live by Heart Today, Show 52, First Year Anniversary Special, with your hosts Don Spiegelberg and Wendy R. Wolf. Our show shall begin now. Streaming from Retro Earth Studio and brought to you by
Learn to play jazz piano like a pro, by a pro, with Jazz Piano Pro Essentials at jazzpianopro.com.
And wearehistorically.com, conscious human apparel. It's time for the next episode of Live by Heart
Today.
So let's get into the show here. What ideas have you got, Wendy?
I'm just looking at this this
When
list
we're in
here.
the vibration of change, external changes aren't so hard.
That is so good.
So
right
we
there.
had toyed with naming a show Inspiring Change. We had talked about endurance. So another name could be Enduring Change.
Related to, could you jot there? Like, I have this whole thing about, what we do is like going to the gym, and what we offer is kind of like personal training that you get at the gym, but like for the inside, and how the important parts of endurance, muscle, strength, flexibility, balance, how these are, people just think that they're made like that. They think, like my mother's like, well, I can't meditate, and I'm always like this, and I'm never like that, and I'm always afraid, and I can't change. It's like, it's something you build. It's not like, it's not a pill, or you get it or you don't. Like, that's the growth mindset thing. Have we talked about growth mindset as opposed to, what's the other kind? And there's this lady who's famous about it.
Yeah, her name is Duckwill or something like that. I know who you're talking about.
So, yeah, but just the idea that this is all, yes, it helps. Some of us are easier in the beginning, but also, and it helps to be in, like, ask and receive for the blessings of heaven or and earth, whatever. But also, most of it is just going to the gym and practicing it.
So one thing you haven't said, which we all know, but the world may not know, is that we go to the gym and we put ourselves through this shift in order to increase our resilience. Now, why do we need resilience? Because when my toddler is walking toward the road, I have to be able to run to catch him before he steps into the road.
Yes.
And if I'm working out at the gym, I'm building up my body's capability to do what I need to do efficiently, right? I've got the resources to do it.
Let's do resilience, because that's the gym. It reduces burnout. It increases our capacity to dance with life as it shows up. And the name, what's the name of the thing we're doing these days?
You mean the theme? Living agreements.
Living agreements. Right, and it takes all this resilience and muscle and all the things to actually be able to do the agreements.
Yes.
Both to make them and then to do them.
To keep the commitment. Yes. Yep. So we build the commitment muscle to keep the commitments. We build the resilience muscles to keep the resilience.
Right. Carol Dweck. And it's growth mindset and what?
Wait, didn't you hear me say Duckworth? You couldn't get Dweck out of Duckworth?
Not today.
Well, I heard about her because they were talking about it at school.
What school?
Elementary school.
Really?
Teaching children, informing teachers how to establish and promote growth mindset. And of course, I picked it up as a parent because I realized, oh, as a parent, you need to support growth mindset at home. And that's not how I was raised. So I don't have those skills necessarily,
But it's who you are.
And my children still have guilt and, struggles. So
Oh,
I
yeah.
am a lot of things.
Yes. True.
So
Yeah.
I want to mention something else, and maybe we can weave this in, or it's not necessary, but it would be beautiful to just mention that the body's goal is something called homeostasis.
Yeah.
What is that? Balancing everything staying, the same, everything in its own place, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if we don't take the action in order to change, in order to shift the system out of just homeostasis, then we're less capable and we don't build strength, right? We build strength by the stress and the pressure on the musculature. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And so
You got to
if
stress
we're,
the system to make it
yes,
stronger.
yes. And if we're not doing that, then the body's perfectly happy to maintain its own homeostasis. And where do we see this the most common in our communities? That's the aging. People
Yeah.
at a certain point in time, they just sit in their chair. And when you see them walking around the grocery store, they're walking, but they're still sitting in the chair.
Yeah.
Right? This whole chair position.
Yeah.
That's the body saying, "Oh, you want to be like this? We can support you being like this."
Yeah. Okay. I think this could be potentially 2 shows. I mean, last show you talked about homeostasis, but we didn't get to talk a lot about it. And there's all this stuff about or how I like inertia, and that goes with it. And how, my whole life is about trying to break out of inertia. That's why I have trouble with the what's it called, transitions. I just like to be where I am doing what I'm doing.
Right. One thing we said a long time ago was, we can't go back to the way it was because we aren't the way we were. And that's also true of our bodies. I can't go back to a year ago, even though I'm looking at videos of myself from a year ago and seeing the clothes that I wore a year ago. I'm a different person today.
So resilient implies the ability to recover shape quickly when
Yes.
the deforming force or pressure is removed.
Yes. Resilience is known as bounce back. When something
Yeah.
happens that, puts you off, whether it's stress or whether it's a situation.
I think that's a good title, Bouncing Back.
Ooh.
Yeah, and in that we'd have to say, we actually can't go back. We have to bounce forward.
Well, you're making an interesting point, because the idea is that resilience is being tilted or tipped off center, and bouncing back is returning to center.
Equanimity.
Yes, equanimity. So bouncing back would be returning to, sort of a normalcy.
Right. Even if it's new. I got a Weebles Wobble picture when you said that.
Yeah, I almost said that. Weeble Wobble, but they don't fall down.
And this is true, because every time I reach over here to grab my water, right, I'm leaning, but there's also a whole set of muscles on this side of me tightening. Otherwise, I'd fall off my chair. But we don't know that because it happens so seamlessly, right? It happens so seamlessly.
And that's the thing. It's like we don't, it doesn't have to be now or anything, but I'm always babbling about, like, nobody told me, nobody told me it'd be like this. in these relationships. Like, it's just crazy. The amount of change and the amount of resilience needed, and the amount of like how much it's about doing taxes, and how it's not not always about, the falling in love part is so fun, and you don't think about like what that's going to mean in the long run. I didn't think about it. That it'll look like conversations about where to put the glass by the sink.
Right? And why can't you just put the glass in the dishwasher? It's right next to the sink where you put it.
Right. So like it's like the setup, it's like the pitch is different than the hit. The ball going this way looks very different than the ball going that way. Right. Like, we have to get knocked down and get back up, and let it be different, and let them be different, and let us be different, and let the relationship be different, or else we're stuck in some dance that's not authentic.
But I could be different two ways. I could be different as an upset, or I could be different as in transformed.
Right.
So
I think we got our content. So
long-term relationship is a really good title. It's a catcher, I just want to say.
Okay.
I don't know that it's the right one for this show, but
We're talking about living agreements. We're talking about love. We're talking about change.
yeah.
I think that's appropriate.
Yeah.
Do we have a consensus?
We're talking about living agreements, and like, not everyone, but a lot of people who are in the love game are in it to be in long-term relationships. And then they're in them. Are we going to talk about resilience? Are we going to talk about letting each other change, waking up new every day? Are we going to talk about...
Yeah, that's all a part of it. Like everything we just talked about, and not just us, but what about them? Right? The building the muscle when the spouse, tells you after 20 years that they don't like the toothpaste you've been using, or something like that, right? Like those shocking moments that test your resilience in a long-term relationship.
Then would it be resilient relationship?
That's a great question.
And my favorite subject in long-term relationships, and all the long-term relationship people I've talked about this with agree. Like, I see the world in everybody's dealing with loneliness, aloneness, this picture, whatever it is. People who are single are like, well, when I'm partnered, it'll be different. And then there's the infatuation stage, in which loneliness is really not the conversation. And then in a long-term relationship, in some, it starts to grow, that I contend that there's more loneliness in relationships than outside of them, because people who are wanting them have the hope of it ending. And then what do we do with that?
You mean the hope of the loneliness ending?
Yes.
Oh. So the title could be Resilient in Relationship, or Resilient Relationships.
I like the double R.
I vote for resilient relationships.
Perfect.
Is that consensus?
Mm-hmm.
All right. We got show 44.
And then 45.
We can swing back around to, is that going to be homeostasis?
Loneliness, yeah.
I got it. We go from resilient relationships to liberating loneliness.
Oh, oh my God. What do you think?
Yes, thank you. Okay, deal.
Thank you, We Are Historically, for your conscious human apparel. Shop online at wearehistorically.com.
Hi, I'm Dawn Spiegelberg, a heart coherence coach. And let's talk about happiness and how you can keep having it in the face of crisis. How can you possibly live a healthy life when you're faced with crisis after crisis after crisis? How do you stay happy? How do you maintain your calm? How do you keep a clear mindset in order to know what to do in moments of crisis? If you need a happiness adjustment, if you want to learn how to be grateful at any time in your life, contact me today so you can experience heart coherence.
Hello, my name is Wendy R. Wolf, and I hope you come to my intensive. I'm really interested in working together with people who are big feelers, healers, also lovers, and leaders. These are the people that tend to be really paying attention to what's going on the inside and how we can help people from there, help other people. And I'm going to offer an intensive with interactive exercises so that we can become empowered as big feelers and healers and lovers and leaders. And I hope you join me. Please go to my website, wendyrwolf.com, and on the top I'll have a button to sign up. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Darius Wilrich. I instruct an online video course that teaches anyone how to play jazz piano like a pro with my proven step-by-step system that makes it simple to learn. Jazz Piano Pro Essentials. Enroll today at jazzpianopro.com and download my free quick start guide.
I realized I totally need to do a healing on the vagus nerve because so many people experience anxiety. So I'm like, boom, okay, Wendy's going to have her thing. When should I have mine?
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, the vagus nerve is like a trending topic from what I can tell these days.
Yeah.
So people, it's in there listening, and you are so brilliant at this kind of thing. I wonder if we can even put it in what we're doing these days. I mean, the vagus nerve stuff, and then people talk about how breathing affects it, and blah, 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 blah. You know better than me. So anyway.
Yeah, and there's a big piece of it they're leaving out, which I got.
Of course, because you're brilliant, genius.
Putting the pieces together.
Yeah. So some of that brilliant genius stuff that you have in there, I'd really like to get out because it's so helpful.
I need it to get out.
Yeah.
Because I need people to know. People got to know.
Yeah. So the last time I got to talk a lot, which I really appreciate and feels a little uncomfortable. So
good. Stretch. It's a stretch for you.
It is.
What show number is this, Russ?
We're going on 46, 47.
Wow. I'm behind on my duplicate.
It's going to be a year before we know it.
Yeah. I love it. Love it, love it, love it. Okay. I've been thinking about living agreements. It's been in the back of my head and the back of my heart. And the most obvious one, and the one that really trips people up a lot, is the living agreement with our parents.
Oh, God.
And I was recently taught this exercise. They call it transference, but you write down the things that trigger you.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, I would write down wet feet trigger me. Like, I hate that more than anything.
When your feet are wet?
Yeah, because on the East Coast, right, you'd walk in, the snow would be kicked off, and then somebody wouldn't sweep it or clean it, and then you'd step in this puddle, and then my socks would get
in
wet.
The water and mud. Yeah.
And then because it's cold there, my feet would never get warm, right? Like, I hated that.
Okay. I hear that.
Right? It's stupid, but that's an example.
Right. It's an example.
Yeah. So then the question is, what are you feeling? Right? I hate my feet being wet. And who reacted that way when you grew up? Your mom or your dad? Oh, it was my mom. And then you answer the question, well, what was her reaction? Oh, she would get upset, she would something. Right? So you recognize, one, you're having a reaction. Two, you're seeing where you learned that behavior of being upset or being frustrated. And then you're realizing, oh, that's the behavior I learned from my parent. And then you get to decide, how do I want to respond to this? Anyway, we don't have to go into all of that, but understanding that the living agreement we have with our parents is that subconsciously we're an open book for the first 6-7 years of our lives, which means we're learning. And that's what Carolyn Mace says, right? That this first 7 years of our lives, we're absorbing, we're figuring out who our parents are in the tribe. Where do we fit in the tribe? What's the correct behavior, for us as a baby? How do our parents behave? Right? Because if you're the child of the medicine man, you have a different perspective on the world than the child of the chief or the child of the warrior or the child of the cook.
Yes.
And so we learn
Hunter.
And paradigms, which is a belief system, just pours in our head.
Absolutely.
Because we don't learn to choose for ourselves until the next 7 years, which is 8 to 15, where it shifts from a global awareness, which is who and how we are in the tribe, to a local awareness. This is where we have a best friend. This is where we develop how to be one-on-one with another person. And we're stretching our wings because we're becoming a little more independent than when we were children, right? Like now you can walk down to the mailbox by yourself and cross the road by yourself, where before that, hell no.
Or even, by the later ages, take the bus downtown.
Right. And the later ages is something else. So in the teenage years, right, from 15 to 20, 21, that's, everybody knows it as the teenage angst. But it then turns global again. Like you want to make a difference in the world. You don't know why the world is so effed up, right? You get mad about this and that and blah, 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 blah.
For good reason.
Right?
I just have to say.
And you might, during those ages, you might feel really constrained. Like if your parents are poor, you might not feel like you have the ability to make change, to create the change that you want to see. Because you might not have, money, you might not see money as a resource. But if you're like in my family, my parents, we are intellectual, we're smart. And my father was super smart. So that's where you see, Wendy, my analyzer is a big deal because that's how I get on in the world.
Right.
Figure it out.
Right.
Think it through.
Me too.
Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
It's the redirection of emotions, right? Like you're having these emotions and you think they're yours and you recognize that they came from somewhere, which would be your parent. You learned it from your parents. And that's the power in it.
Yeah.
But we can call it something else, right? I can just say,
I like it if we talk about it. If we say it's officially used called this, it's usually applied to the therapist, but really it's about our whole experience of life.
Yes.
Well, this is, for me, I love this because I'm all about soul evolution. I'm all about us maturing. And this is yet another paradigm of that, of which there are dozens I could find. There's probably more. It's yet another paradigm of how things have come together, and how we can understand how we got where we are and how we get where we want to go. Mm-hmm.
It may be worth mentioning how our bodies are really affected by the environments that we live in.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, I was affected very much so as a child, right? Very physically, it became evident as a child. And my childhood upbringing was very different than Wendy's. My parents went to church, right? And it was just a very different environment. They were in church all the time, supporting people in church, right? Doing their best to be compassionate and kind. And, it was just a different way to grow up. Because how are we going to tie this in? One, living by heart helps change our lives. And two, these patterns are so deep in us from our parents, from our environment, that sometimes we need a boost to look at it, to figure it out, to know what we want, to turn to love.
I got a dolphin meditation playing in the background. Is that disturbing anyone?
No, I can't hear it.
Okay.
Here's one thing, right? I can also talk about how oxytocin is a big player in the early, right? Because when you're in labor, oxytocin is what helps, give birth to the baby, and you're flooded with oxytocin when that baby arrives. And then if you nurse, there's more oxytocin. So there's this whole chemical of connection. This is the chemical that they're now applying to feeling connected to God too. And so they have this labor intensive oxytocin dump, and then it goes away, and then they go through deep depression. It's called postpartum depression. And here's one of the reasons why. They're not continuing to produce oxytocin. And I also have another theory about postpartum depression, because it doesn't happen in other cultures, a lot of other cultures. And what I noticed in other cultures is, one, they tend to bind themselves. They wrap their bellies, right? So after giving birth, there's all this space, and your intestines and organs and things are like, what's going on? We're not supposed to move, right? Because they've just been all cramped with a baby in there.
Yes.
And now they're moving, and that's disorienting. And
for the body, there for the soul.
Yeah, other cultures bind themselves, so everything feels like it's got a home again. And so they don't have that disorienting, lost, where am I going? What the hell's going on in my life? Isn't that
fascinating corollary with binding the baby, bundling the baby, whatever that's called.
Mm-hmm.
Because it feels so good for them, because that's what they're used to. So it's like mother and child. There was a habit of swaddling, and that doesn't happen.
No, swaddling the baby, swaddling the mom.
I never even heard of that swaddling the mom thing.
I happened upon it because I happened to be binding myself. And one time I unbound and stepped in the shower, and I was so disoriented and felt sick and oh my God, this must be what they're experiencing.
Wow.
Yeah, I felt
and
terrible.
You did it because it made sense to you?
I did it because it made sense to me. When you have kids, right, like your girlfriends kind of say, oh, try this or do that. And
yes.
A girlfriend had one that she said, oh, try this after you give birth. And I tried it, and it made I didn't have a baby before, but it helped my sense of myself, because it brought everything back in. And, you've been living with your belly stuck out for a long time, and you have to maneuver in the world differently.
Yes.
And then to have myself back, it was so good. It was so good. Psychologically, right? Getting my belly back to me. It also helped me with my own self-image, because so many changes were happening, and then I was able to get my figure back. I mean, it sounds strange, but
No,
that
it's
brought
useful.
my own identity back for me.
Yeah.
Because your new life is changing diapers, nursing, and trying to get that kid to fall asleep. And then can you get some cleaning done? Changing diapers, nursing, try to get that kid to fall asleep. I have to take a shower, changing diapers, nursing, try to get to the right. I mean,
Yeah.
everything is about the kid.
Yeah. Anyway, here we are doing the show as usual. It's
Yeah. And I actually
it's
think this is now like a lost understanding, because when women wore the corsets and all the tight things, that was fashion, but it had this amazing result after giving birth, right? Like it had this
Yes.
crazy benefit, which maybe they weren't aware of, because that was the thing, that was the
Yes.
fashion.
Yes.
And now that it's not the fashion, they don't realize the extreme benefit of
Right.
having it.
Right. Okay, so now that we have like 4 shows worth of ideas as usual.
And I like the flavor that you added about maturing. I think we should focus on that. The idea of teleos, because when a baby squirrel is born, it sees from its parent how to be a squirrel and where to look at the nuts. And it has its
Yes.
own innate motivation, right? Its own instinct to do that. And people, I believe, have purpose, and parents often don't have an understanding of how to cultivate a purpose of the child's purpose, their innate born purpose. So what happens is they want them to sit up straight at the table, they want them to eat properly, they want them to get dressed and match, and they want them to go to school and get good grades, and they have all these ideals
Yes,
that have
ideals.
absolutely nothing to do with the child's purpose.
Right. Yeah. And that's it is part of the job of parents. It is to be able to fit in our society. But also I believe what the job of the parents is to nurture our purpose, nurture that oak that's hidden in the acorn for each, which is each different. And sometimes parents are just trying so hard to get through the day and get their kids through alive and somewhat acculturated that so much falls through the cracks.
Well, I think we've mentioned this in the show before, but there's a fine balance between developing a child's independence, because as soon as they're born, they start the journey to independence, right?
Yeah.
Like that's just the thing. There's a difference between helping and supporting their independence and pushing them out too soon or holding them close too long.
Yeah.
And the thing is, the parents don't have to know. The child knows, and that's where the problem begins. The parent thinks the parent knows, but it's actually the child knows when it's ready to go play with, another playmate that they've never met before, or if they have to stay near you
Yes.
for 20 more minutes or for the whole play date, right? Like the child knows what the child needs until a certain, and even at certain ages, they still communicate what they need.
Yeah.
For me, it's all about the freedom of choosing. So we have all these influences in our lives, and we get to choose. Do we accept that influence and then express it? Or do we choose to express something else?
And that's all contingent on becoming conscious of it. Okay, so now we have six shows worth of stuff as usual. I really do think all these outtakes, Rusty, could be like a whole show in themselves. By the way. constantly blah, 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 blah.
The way Dawn started, I was like going, wow, like, should I just turn my video off?
We have the first show done.
And that concludes this portion of
Live by Heart today!
Thank you for watching. View more episodes on our YouTube channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Let's give a shout out to our sponsors. Shop online at wearehistorically.com. Conscious Human Apparel.
Hi, I'm Darius Wilrich. I'll teach you everything you need to know about playing jazz piano like a pro with my 12-week online video course and downloadable guidebook, Jazz Piano Pro Essentials. Enroll today at jazzpianopro.com.
Thanks for joining us. Have a happy always.
Thanks, friends. That was really great.